Welcome to the show. We all know at least a little something about our roots, but for most of us, the tales of our heritage tend to lose some of their veracity as they are passed down through generations. But for those of us that find ourselves addicted to getting to know our origins, we have a new resource in Washington County, the Kinship Family Heritage Center. And here to tell us a little bit more about it is Carol Miller-Schultz. Carol, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm going to toss to Ron for the first question.
Carol, talk to us a little bit about the Kinship, how it works, and where it's located.
Kinship Center is located at the Miller House, the Washington County Historical Society. We have rebranded the library there. We've gone through our resources there and have just genealogy materials, things that would be relevant to someone searching their family history. So it is a dedicated genealogy center in Hagerstown, the only one in Hagerstown.
Cool. Colin?
So, at least having the benefit of knowing that my generation is the first in the county of my family, I guess I would like to know a little bit about the program, first of all, as an introduction, and how it came to be about in Washington County.
The committee got together about 18 months ago, and then they gathered together some people for library committee that had knowledge of the county, the school system, genealogy, and so forth, and talked about this dream of having this dedicated genealogy center. And just because you are first generation Washington County doesn't mean that you won't find something there for your family too. We have resources from all over the country. As people move around, they tend to then donate their history to historical societies.
Awesome. Very good to know.
Danielle?
Did the county have a similar program like this previously, or is this the first of its kind?
We have helped with genealogy at the Historical Society for many years, but we also had a lot of books that had nothing to do with genealogy. This is the first program in this county. The Western Maryland room at the library also has resources too. Some of the resources are duplicated at the Historical Society, and some are completely different at both locations.
And if you don't mind, I ask, how is the program funded?
Donations. Donations and a few grants, and a lot of dedicated board members at the Historical Society that donate their time and resources, but mostly donations and membership.
So, Carol, what would I expect if I were wanting to do research on our family history? What would I expect to find there, and what assistance do you provide?
The people that work there, we have a curator and we have a registrar, and then starting October 13th on Wednesday afternoons from 1 to 4, we will have our staff genealogist that will be there, so you could go in at that time to talk with her, and she could orient you to the resources we have there. Some of the great things that we have there are things like city directories. We have a vertical file that contains many family histories that people have donated. If people write their family history, they donate it to the Historical Society. Lots of things, land records and Bible records and so forth, which are just very crucial for doing your family history. So there's help, and starting October 1, it's free. You don't have to be a member to get in there for free to do your research.
So just to follow up on that, you said there were some resources that were duplicated between the Western Maryland room and this new facility. Can you point to any primary resources that are not duplicated that you might have that the Western Maryland room wouldn't?
Some of the Bibles that have been donated. There's this wonderful section between the Old Testament and the New Testament in old Bibles where people wrote in when people were born and when they were married and when they died. And so that's a wonderful resource, because before birth certificates were issued by the state, or death certificates, which started typically around 1900, that was the only way that you could have any kind of proof of when somebody was born or somebody was married or their death.
Okay. Ron?
How do you cross-reference? You're SCHULTZ. What if you're S-H-U-L-T-Z-E? What if you're a S-H-U-L-T-Z? How do you figure that? Because a lot of people dropped a lot of letters out of their names over the years.
That is a great question. And the first cardinal rule in doing genealogy is spelling does not count for many reasons. For example, many of our ancestors were illiterate. So when the census taker knocked on the door and took down the records, or they went to the courthouse, the person writing down the information wrote it the way they thought it should be spelled. If you were illiterate, you didn't know to correct them. Also, sometimes people changed the spelling of their name because they wanted to fit in. If they were coming from a country and they wanted to anglicize their name, they would change it.
Along with Ron's question, what about the shortening of names? Can you tell us a little bit about
And
why
yes,
that happened?
well, that again, people did not want to be associated with certain countries when they came here, so they would, they didn't want to sound like they came from a particular country, so they
Right.
just changed their name. And it is a myth that names were changed at Ellis Island. That did not happen.
Really?
It did not happen. If people changed their names, they did it on their own. No one else did that.
So Danielle, think of what pop might have been.
We debate about that all the time.
in years past.
In fact, actually, we have a second home in South Jersey where everyone's Italian or Irish, and we just make up our own last name. We're the Papalinis if we want to be. So
27 letters with 25 consonants, right?
right. So if you wanted to find out, what your name could have been, you could come to an organization like yours to research.
Absolutely. Yes.
Colin?
So, this is a challenge that actually I run into, and my wife is Clan Donald. We have been trying to work through the genealogy. The first record that we have is of one of her ancestors who is transcribed as a McDaniel in Virginia. My family is actually a lot more difficult. So the one problem that I run into is most of the genealogy projects we have here in the U.S. only deal with people who have a history here in the U.S. So my parents came over here from overseas. When I go onto Ancestry.com or any place else like that, I find nothing.
We have, I'm glad you brought that up, at the Washington County Historical Society, we do have a subscription to Ancestry.com, so if you would like to come and use that, and we also have a subscription to NewspaperArchive.com. I also teach genealogy courses for the Hagerstown Community College. There are some shortcuts and things that we could teach you about how you might be more successful with your research.
Gotcha.
Now, the other thing is you always start with yourself and you work backwards. So you start with the known and work back to the unknown. So the most current thing, and just keep building on that, and that might help you find that information you're looking for.
So for $9 more, you'll give me the answer. I'm saying that facetiously because a lot of times when you're Google searching it or searching it, they'll ask you for a fee. Well, if you pay so much, we'll give it to you. Do you charge? And how do you cross-reference? Do you have the computers and the capability to cross-reference names? Do you have a data bank that you draw from, or how do you do that?
We have 3 computers down at the Historical Society at the Kinship Center, and we would teach you, first of all, how to use Ancestry and how to find information. And then there are a lot of free websites out there that we can teach you about that you can cross-reference and get more information.
Aside from, just a last name, what do you find that people are coming there in search of?
Sometimes they are researching their property. There are a lot of historic homes in Washington County, and there are records there about that as well. And so a lot of times they will come and research that.
So, Carol, genealogy, I always envision, and certainly Ancestry in recent years, but people walking around cemeteries and so on and
Yes.
so forth. Is that still a necessary part of the investigation process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can, as much as we would like to sit on our couch with our laptop and do all of our research, we can't. We still need to go to courthouses, churches, walk through cemeteries, and libraries.
Ship records, as I found out recently. So We were in Scotland here recently, and again trying to figure out my wife's heritage, and we're card-carrying members of Clan Donald now. So we spent a day in Slate on the Isle of Skye looking through Clan Donald, through the Clan Donald archives at ship records from around 1800, looking for anybody who matched even a vague description of her great-great, however many times, grandfather. Again, the first record we know if somebody was in Virginia that was actually on the census and everything, but his father was the one who came over, and we spent a day going through literally probably about 300 or 400 ship records during that period of time.
Did you find it?
No. Well, we may have. We're not sure.
Okay. It reminds me, I spent 20 plus years looking for the ship that my great grandmother came over on. She came from Ireland. The family story was she came over when she was about 7, and her parents were illiterate, so it's hard to tell whether or not she really was 7 because she didn't know her own birthday.
Right.
And I finally asked somebody else to look for me. So with a fresh set of eyes, somebody else found it in 2 hours.
Really?
Yes.
Amazing. And I think therein lies, part of the challenge. So certainly when we're dealing with census records, when we're dealing with things that are actually in the public record, it becomes a lot easier to track things. Once you go beyond that, and once you go outside the immediate memory of people who are surviving,
Yeah.
then it becomes very, very vague. And that's really, I think, where a lot of the hard part comes in. And honestly, I think that's where some of the genealogy or the DNA testing comes into benefit.
So the hard part for me is cutting this segment short because I'm sure there are other questions we could ask. Carol, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next up on the flip side, a 15-year-old girl arrested after hitting a car with her bike. We'll sift through the facts when we're back in 3 minutes. Stay with us.